The exile. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with tension as representatives from over 200 species filled the circular hall. The massive dome above them displayed the stars that connected their civilizations, stars that humanity had only recently begun to traverse. Admiral Elena Kowalski stood alone at the center platform, her military uniform crisp despite the 12-hour wait they had forced upon her. She was the last voice of Earth in this chamber, and she could already feel the cold reception from the alien delegates surrounding her. "The Council will now address the human question," announced High Counselor Zax Vorn, his translucent tentacles rippling with bioluminescent patterns that betrayed his agitation. The Corel Elder had lived for over 900 years and had guided the Council through 3 major interstellar conflicts. He had never hidden his distrust of humanity. "For too long we have observed the humans expand at an alarming rate," he continued, his voice translated through the neural interfaces of every being present. "Their adaptation speed threatens the balance we have maintained for millennia." Elena gripped the podium tighter. This wasn't a trial, it was an execution. The decision had been made long before she'd entered the chamber. "Counselor, Earth has abided by every treaty since our introduction to the galactic community," she stated firmly. "We've contributed medical advancements, terraforming techniques, and cultural exchanges that have benefited dozens of species. From the upper tiers, the Viridian representative, a crystalline being who had once been an ally, spoke. "The problem isn't what you have done, Admiral. It's what you could do. Your species learns in decades what takes others centuries. You replicate and improve upon technologies at a pace that destabilizes economies and power structures." "So our crime is adaptation?" Elena asked, her voice echoing across the chamber. "Our crime is learning? Your crime," interrupted Zax Vorn, "is unpredictability. In the last 15 years since humanity joined the galactic stage, you have advanced your spacefaring capabilities by 200%. Your population has expanded to 12 colony worlds. Your resource consumption has tripled." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Arkelian representative, a species known for their logical approach, raised a scaled hand. "The mathematical projections are clear. At the current rate, humans would surpass the technological capabilities of even the Corel within 70 years. No species in Council history has ever displayed such an acceleration curve." Elena felt a cold weight settling in her stomach. These weren't new arguments, she had been briefed on the growing concerns, but she had hoped reason would prevail. "And what is your solution to this mathematical concern?" she asked, knowing the answer. Zax Vorn's upper eyes narrowed. "The Council has voted. By a majority of 167 to 33 with 12 abstentions, humanity is to be quarantined to their home system. All outposts, colonies, and stations beyond Sol must be evacuated within 1 standard cycle. All technology sharing will cease. All diplomatic ties will be severed." The chamber fell silent. Elena stood frozen, the magnitude of the verdict washing over her. "You're cutting us off completely?" she finally managed. "It is not a permanent measure," offered the Viridian, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Once humanity has demonstrated a slower, more predictable progression, the Council may reconsider." "You mean once we've stagnated to a pace you find comfortable?" Elena replied, her diplomatic restraint cracking. "You fear us because we don't fit your models." "We fear what we cannot predict," Zax Vorn stated simply. "The decision is final. Earth and its solar system are hereby placed under isolation protocol. Any human vessel attempting to breach the containment barrier will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." Elena looked around the chamber, searching for allies. The representatives from Proxima Centauri and Tau Ceti, human colony worlds, had already been removed from the Council. The few species who had voted against the measure averted their eyes. "This is a mistake," she said finally. "Not because it dooms humanity. We survived in isolation before, and we will survive again. It's a mistake because you have just shown every emerging species in the galaxy that adaptation and growth are punishable offenses. You've revealed that the Council doesn't foster progress, it fears it." She removed her council insignia and placed it on the podium. The small metallic disc, a symbol of Earth's membership in the galactic community, seemed pathetically insignificant now. "We will comply with your quarantine," she stated, her voice steady despite the rage and disappointment coursing through her. "But remember this moment, counselors. You haven't contained a threat today. You've created one." As Elena turned to leave, Zaxvorn called after her. "The quarantine begins immediately, Admiral. You will be escorted to the last transport returning to Earth." She didn't dignify him with a response. 3 months after the quarantine began, Earth was in turmoil. The sudden evacuation of 12 colony worlds had strained resources and housing. Economies that had relied on interstellar trade collapsed overnight. Riots erupted in major cities as people demanded answers from governments that had none to give. In an underground facility beneath the Atlantic Ocean, Dr. Sanjay Patel addressed the Emergency Council of scientists, military leaders, and government officials from around the world. "The quarantine barrier is impenetrable with our current technology," he explained, pointing to the holographic display showing the energy field that now encircled the entire solar system. "The Council has positioned automated defensive platforms at every potential exit vector. They're serious about keeping us contained." "What about the colonists from Proxima?" asked the Brazilian president. "Any contact?" General Ramirez shook his head. "None. We believe they've been forcibly relocated to other systems or—" He didn't finish the sentence. "So we've lost everything beyond our solar system," summarized the Chinese premier. "Our outposts, our mining operations, our research stations, decades of work, trillions in resources." Elena Kowalski, now heading Earth's Unified Defense Initiative, stepped forward. "We haven't lost everything. We've gained clarity." All eyes turned to her. The Council showed its hand. "They fear our potential, so I propose we realize that potential, not to seek revenge, but to ensure this never happens again." Dr. Patel looked skeptical. "The technology gap is substantial. Even with our rate of advancement, it would take decades to match their capabilities." "Then we change the game," Elena replied. "If we can't beat them with their technology, we create something new, something they've never seen before." The room fell silent as she called up a new projection, a theoretical design unlike anything humanity had built before. "This is Project Ascension. Not a ship, not a weapon, but a new paradigm in how we interact with space-time itself. The Council races all developed along similar technological paths. But what if there are other paths they never explored because they didn't need to? Paths that were too difficult or counterintuitive for their neural structures?" Dr. Patel stepped closer to the projection, his eyes widening. "You're proposing we develop technology based on human-specific cognitive architecture? Things that would only make sense to human minds?" "Exactly," Elena nodded. "The Council species think they know our limits because they've seen their own. They've never truly understood how humans think, how we create, how we connect seemingly unrelated concepts. This would require a complete reorientation of our scientific approach," noted the Japanese science minister. "We would need to abandon much of what we've learned from galactic standards." "And that's precisely why it will work," Elena insisted. "They expect us to follow their technological roadmap, just at a pace they disapprove of. They won't expect us to forge an entirely new path." Skeptical murmurs filled the room, but Elena could also see the spark of interest in many eyes. Humans had always thrived when challenged, when backed into corners. "How long would this take?" asked the U.S. President. 10 years minimum, Dr. Patel estimated, with global cooperation and unlimited resources. "Then that's what we'll do," Elena declared. "We tell our people the truth. The galaxy rejected us because they feared our potential. Now we'll spend the next decade realizing that potential, not for vengeance but for security, for a future where humanity can never be dismissed again." The leaders exchanged glances, weighing the enormity of the proposal. "What do you need from us?" asked the Russian president finally. Elena's answer was simple. "Everything." The decade of isolation transformed Earth and its solar system in ways no one could have predicted. United by a common purpose, the nations of Earth pooled resources and talent. The quarantine that was meant to contain humanity instead concentrated its creative energy. Mars, once a fledgling colony, became a manufacturing powerhouse. The asteroid belt was systematically harvested for materials. Jupiter's moons hosted vast research facilities where scientists pursued avenues of development that diverged radically from Council norms. Project Ascension evolved beyond its initial concept. What began as a theoretical exercise in human-centric technology became a revolutionary approach to manipulating fundamental forces. Rather than focusing on traditional energy-matter interactions like Council tech, humanity explored consciousness-reality interfaces, technology that responded not just to commands but to intentions, emotions, and collective human thought patterns. 2I2, the observing Council monitoring stations. Earth appeared to be progressing along expected lines, rebuilding infrastructure, expanding within Sol, developing incrementally improved propulsion and weapons. The quantum tests, the consciousness mapping, the reality folding experiments, all were conducted in shielded facilities that appeared as nothing more than standard research outposts to outside scans. On the 10th anniversary of the quarantine, Elena Kowalski, now significantly grayer but no less determined, stood on the observation deck of Ganymede Station. Through the viewport, she could see the massive structure taking shape in Jupiter's shadow. The culmination of Project Ascension. Dr. Patel joined her, his holographic presence flickering slightly due to the distance from his physical body on Earth. The final components are being integrated today, he reported. The consciousness core is stable. The reality fields are aligned. We're ready. Elena nodded, studying the massive construct. It didn't look like a conventional vessel or weapon. Its form was organic, almost alive, flowing curves and pulsing surfaces that seemed to shift even as one watched. The Council expects us to eventually develop better ships, better weapons, she said quietly. They're prepared for that. They're not prepared for this. No, agreed Patel. They're not. The Ascension doesn't just bend physical laws, it rewrites them within its influence sphere. It's not just a tool. It's an extension of collective human will. Elena turned to face his hologram. Are we certain we can control it? Patel's expression was solemn. It's not about control in the traditional sense. The Ascension responds to consensus reality, what humanity collectively believes and intends. That's its safeguard and its limitation. It cannot be used for purposes that violate our shared ethical boundaries. And the test results? Consistent. Within its field, our laws of physics become suggestions. Space and time become malleable. The barrier the Council erected around our system might as well be tissue paper. Elena turned back to the viewport. Tomorrow, then, we make our return to the stars. Not as conquerors, not as refugees, but as equals who will never be dismissed. Again. As the Ascension pulsed with increasing energy, sensor stations throughout the solar system registered unusual phenomena. For the first time in a decade, humanity prepared to step beyond the boundaries imposed upon them, not with the tools their jailers expected, but with something entirely new. The quarantine was about to end, not because the Council permitted it, but because humanity had transcended it. The return on the edge of the Sol system, the Council monitoring station designated Outpost Vigil 17, had maintained its lonely watch for a decade. Staffed by rotating crews of Arkelian observers, its sole purpose was to ensure humanity remained contained within the quarantine field. Senior observer Krell Tav suppressed a yawn as he scanned the latest sensor readings. Another, uneventful, cycle, just like the thousands before it. The humans had been surprisingly compliant with their isolation, focusing their energies on developing their inner system rather than testing the barrier. Anything interesting? Asked his junior colleague, Vexnar, who had just begun her first assignment. Never is, Kreltav replied. The humans build their little ships, mine their asteroids, terraform their planets, all within predictable parameters. It seems wasteful to maintain this station, Vexnar commented. The quarantine field is automated. The defense platforms would activate without our intervention. Kreltav shrugged his scaled shoulders. Council protocol. They want eyes on the humans at all times. Something about their unpredictability. As if responding to his words, the sensor array suddenly erupted with alerts. Kreltav jumped to his feet, mandibles clicking in surprise. What is that? Vexnar asked, staring at the readings. I don't know, Kreltav admitted, his claws dancing across the controls. Some kind of energy surge near Jupiter. Nothing in our database matches the signature. The holographic display showed a swirling distortion spreading outward from Jupiter's orbit. It wasn't an explosion or a weapon discharge. It looked more like reality itself was being gently folded. Alert the Council, Kreltav ordered. Tell them. He never finished the sentence. The distortion expanded faster than their sensors could track, engulfing the monitoring station in a field of altered physics. To Kreltav's shock, the station's walls became transparent, then semi-translucent, before resolving back to normal. Except now, there was a human woman standing in the center of their command deck. Not physically present. Her form had a shimmering, projected quality, but undeniably there. Hello, said Elena Kowalski, her image smiling politely. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but we felt a demonstration was in order. Kreltav's training took over. This station is under Council jurisdiction. How did you breach the quarantine field? How are you projecting this image? Elena's projection walked around the command center, examining the Arkelian technology with mild interest. We're not projecting an image in the way you understand it, she explained. Rather, we've created a localized field where I can partially exist in your reality. I am simultaneously standing in a chamber near Jupiter and here on your station. The quarantine field remains intact. We simply exist in a state where it doesn't apply to us anymore. Vexnar backed away, reaching for the emergency protocols panel. That's impossible. No known council technology, Elena corrected gently. You confined us to our system and expected us to develop along the same technological paths as every other species, just at a pace you found threatening. Instead, we found a different path entirely. Kreltav's scientific curiosity briefly overcame his alarm. What have you done? We created the Ascension, Elena replied. Not a ship or a weapon, but a new relationship with reality itself. It doesn't break physical laws. It negotiates with them. Outside the viewport, space rippled like water, and a massive structure phased into existence. It resembled nothing in Council records, organic curves of iridescent material that seemed to pulse with life, fields of energy that folded in impossible geometries, surfaces that existed in multiple states simultaneously. At this moment, Elena continued, similar demonstrations are occurring at every Council monitoring station around our system. The quarantine field remains technically functional, but fundamentally irrelevant to us. Kreltav found his voice. Again. Is this a declaration of war? An invasion? Elena's expression softened. No. It's an invitation to renegotiate our relationship with the galactic community. The Council feared our rapid adaptation and development. That fear led to our containment. But containment didn't slow us down. It accelerated and focused us. She gestured to the Ascension visible outside. We could have emerged with weapons, with vengeance in our hearts. Instead, we're offering something new. The Ascension technology can revolutionize travel, communication, energy production, and yes, defenses. But its nature prevents it from being weaponized in traditional ways. How is that possible? Vexnar asked. Because it's fundamentally linked to collective human consciousness, Elena explained. It responds to consensus reality, what we collectively value and believe. And despite what the Council may think of, us humanity doesn't desire conquest or destruction. We desire security, growth, and connection. Before either Arkelian could respond, their communication array activated. Similar reports were flooding in from throughout the quarantine perimeter. Humans appearing simultaneously across multiple locations, impossible energy signatures, reality itself bending around these new constructs. We're transmitting technical, Data about the Ascension's peaceful applications to your systems, Elena continued. We request a full council session to discuss the end of the quarantine and humanity's new role in the galactic community, not as a threat to be contained, but as partners with unique contributions to offer. Kreltov studied the incoming data with disbelief. If these readings were accurate, the humans had developed technology that operated on principles the Council, species had never even theorized. You understand the Council will see this as confirmation of their fears, he said carefully, that you've become too powerful, too quickly. Elena's projection began to fade slightly, the energy required to maintain her presence across such distances taxing even the Ascension's capabilities. Perhaps, she acknowledged, but they now face a choice. Continue to fear and oppose us, a path that leads nowhere productive, or embrace the opportunity we represent. The quarantine was meant to contain a perceived threat. Today we've shown it's ineffective. Tomorrow we hope to show it's unnecessary. As her form faded entirely, her voice lingered in the air. One standard day, observer Kreltov. We await the Council's response. Left alone with the impossible data flooding their screens, the Arkelians could only stare at the Ascension hovering outside their station, a monument to the mistake of underestimating human potential. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from 200 species shouted over one another, demanding explanations, proposing military responses, or simply expressing shock at the sudden demonstration of humanity's new capabilities. High Counselor Zax Vorn, noticeably aged since imposing the quarantine a decade earlier, struggled to maintain order. The Corel Elder finally resorted to activating the chamber's sonic dampeners, forcing silence upon the assembly. We will address this crisis with dignity, he announced, his tentacles rigid with stress. The humans have requested this audience, and we will hear them. The massive doors to the chamber parted, and a single human figure entered, not Elena Kowalski, but Dr. Sanjay Patel. He walked calmly to the center of the chamber, seeming untroubled by the hostile stares from all sides. Where is Admiral Kowalski? Zax Vorn demanded. She initiated this demonstration. Admiral Kowalski is simultaneously attending to diplomatic missions on 17 worlds, Patel replied evenly. The Ascension allows her consciousness to be present in multiple locations. She sends her regards. Murmurs swept through the chamber despite the dampeners. You stand before this council having violated the quarantine, Zax Vorn stated. Having demonstrated technology that threatens the established order of this galaxy. What do you expect from us? Patel looked around the chamber thoughtfully. Understanding, ideally. But we'll settle for pragmatism. He activated a small device on his wrist, and the chamber's central holographic display came to life, not through the Council's systems, but through a localized ascension field. It showed the principles of the new human technology, though in simplified terms. The quarantine was imposed because you feared our rate of development, Patel explained. You feared where our trajectory would take us. Today, we've shown you exactly where it took us, not to weapons that could destroy your worlds, but to technology that transcends traditional limitations. Technology that renders our defenses useless, countered the Viridian representative. How is that not a threat? Because of its nature, Patel replied. The Ascension isn't a traditional technology. It's a bridge between consciousness and reality. It can only express what humanity collectively values. And despite your fears, domination and destruction are not our values. He gestured to the display where the Ascension's principles were illustrated. This technology could revolutionize medicine, exploration, energy production. It could solve resource scarcity across the galaxy. But it cannot be weaponized in the way you fear, because its foundational principles prevent it, even if we believe that, said Zax Vorn skeptically. The fact remains that humanity has demonstrated the ability to ignore our containment measures. What prevents you from simply taking what you want from the galaxy? Patel smiled slightly. The same thing that prevented us from destroying your monitoring stations when we revealed ourselves, The same thing that brings me here to talk instead of demonstrating more dramatically. The ascension isn't just a technological achievement, it's a philosophical one. It has made us more human, not less. Explain, demanded the Arkelian representative, leaning forward with scientific curiosity. The ascension functions by consensus reality. It responds to what humanity collectively believes is possible and right. To use it, we had to develop technologies that linked our minds, our values, our ethics. We had to agree on fundamental principles. The result was unexpected. The more we connected, the more we valued cooperation over conflict, creation over destruction. Patel gestured to the space beyond the council chamber's windows, where several ascension constructs now hovered in the distance. Beautiful, impossible geometries that somehow felt right to the observer. "We're here to offer a choice, Kang," he continued. "Continue to fear and oppose us, forcing us to develop in isolation, a path that benefits no one. Or recognize that the quarantine has failed in its purpose but succeeded in creating something new. Humanity unified, focused, and ready to contribute to the galaxy in ways no one could have predicted." The chamber remained silent as the implications sank in. Finally, a species that had not spoken before, the Nethril, one of the oldest council members, raised their crystalline form. 10 cycles ago, I abstained from the vote to quarantine humanity, the ancient being's thoughts translated through the neural interface. Not because I did not share the concerns, but because I recognized a pattern from our history. Every time we have attempted to contain a species' development, we have either destroyed them or transformed them into something unexpected. It seems humanity has followed the latter path. The Nethril turned their faceted surface toward Patel. "What precisely are you proposing, human?" "An end to the quarantine," Patel stated simply. "Recognition of humanity's sovereignty, and a new, cooperative relationship where we share appropriate applications of ascension technology with species ready to utilize it responsibly." "And if we refuse?" Zaxvorn asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Then we'll respect your decision," Patel replied. "We'll maintain our own space and development path. We won't force our presence where it's not wanted. But the quarantine will remain irrelevant, not because we choose to violate it, but because we exist in a state where it simply doesn't apply to us anymore." The underlying message was clear. The Council could accept humanity's re-emergence into galactic society on cooperative terms, or humanity would simply exist beyond their ability to contain or control. The Viridian representative, who had once been among the strongest voices for quarantine, spoke reluctantly. "The demonstration of your technology has been convincing. You could have emerged with force. Instead, you're standing here alone offering partnership." "Because that's who we are," Patel answered. "Despite your fears, despite the injustice of our isolation, we remained true to our values. We developed the ascension not to dominate, but to ensure we could never be dismissed again." Zaxvorn's tentacles rippled with complex emotions. "This council must deliberate on your proposal, but I suspect we all recognize the reality before us. The quarantine has failed, not because our technology was insufficient, but because we fundamentally misunderstood what humanity would become." Patel nodded. "We'll await your decision. But know this, the galaxy is about to enter a new era, with or without the Council's blessing. We hope it will be an era of cooperation, rather than division." As Patel turned to leave, the Nethril's thoughts echoed in the chamber one final time. "We feared humanity would develop too quickly along paths we understood. Instead, they found a path we never imagined. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson here. Our attempts to impose limitations only inspired them to transcend those limitations entirely." Outside the council station, the Ascension constructs pulsed with gentle light, not a display of power, but a promise of possibilities that the galaxy had never before considered. The quarantine had been meant to contain humanity's potential. Instead, it had focused it, refined it, and transformed it into something greater than anyone could have predicted. A force not of destruction, but of transformation that would forever change the face of the galaxy. And as the council deliberated, Humanity waited patiently, secure in the knowledge that they had not only survived exile, but had transcended it completely.